Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, 7-time award winner Chad Robert Morgan, and let's address the elephant in the room. Where were we last week? I'll try to keep it short, try not to be too personal about it, but the day before that great interview with Doug Brody, author of Shelley, my mother had passed away. And for those who don't know, my mother was living with us for many, many years. So as her only child, I have the responsibility of, finding the mortuary, paying the bills, dealing with the doctors and insurance, getting all the stuff cleared out of her room. So, I took a week off from work. I took a week off from Ubering, and I was still trying to read, but time was short and I did not get another book done. So I didn't have anything to put on the podcast because I was busy, unfortunately. We're in the midst still of cleaning things up and dealing with that. It's one reason why my office is a shambles, because we cleaned up her room. My room is taking the brunt of it, but we're in the process of cleaning this room up next. Hopefully by the next podcast, this place will be a bit more presentable. So we are working on that. Next order of business, let's talk about microphones. So, been trying out new lapel mics like this one here. The first one we tried worked out really well. The reason why we're not sticking with it isn't because the microphone's bad, quite the opposite. The microphone worked very well. The problem was it only synced 2 microphones, and I have an interview coming up where I will not only be interviewing the author, but the illustrator, so I needed at least 3. So I picked another microphone that has lapel mics and a dongle to sync them all. And that was 2 podcasts ago, about 3 weeks ago. And that didn't come out very well. I had to really fuss with the equalizer settings to get it anywhere usable. Almost had to redo the whole podcast. I was not happy with that one. I actually returned that one to Amazon. So this week we are trying how am I going to mispronounce this? Gicorno microphone. Gicorino. So we'll have to see how the quality comes out, but so far it really is nice. It comes with this charging case. One thing that kind of bit me in the butt is they had little protector things on the bottom. So I did not, I thought they were charging. They weren't charging. I peeled it off, popped it in. This guy's already, we'll see here. It's only been charging for maybe about 30 minutes and we're almost at 100% here. The dongle also comes with its own USB-A adapter. So if you're plugging it directly into your phone, one side goes into iPhone, the other into Android. But if you want it for PC, it has its own adapter. The first one I bought, which I did like, it didn't come with an adapter and I had to buy my own. It was a minor problem. This one comes with its own adapter. It also comes with little windsocks for all the microphones for if you're outdoors. But this one actually handles 4 separate microphones. And this one does cost a little bit more with the charging case and everything. It was about $80. You can get it down to about 60 if you go sans case. So the ultimate test, of course, all this is well and good. This is like uber cool, but how does it sound? Well, we'll find out when I start editing this podcast because I'm using the mic right now. If it works, I am all set for March. If it doesn't work, I had to find another solution. So I'll keep at it. Today's topic, I wanted to talk a little bit about AI, because AI has gotten a really bad rep. A lot of it's kind of warranted. There's a lot of flack out there. Oh, if you use AI in your book, I'm not reading it. It's crap notes. I'm not. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the legal and ethical uses of generative AI in your work. And before you go, there is none. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Settle your horses. Now, first of all, I need to tell you, I'm not a lawyer. I have done some research on the topic, but I am not a lawyer. So don't take everything I say as, the law, Do your own research, consult with a lawyer if you're really concerned about it. But this is my understanding of the law, which could be flawed. I need to put that out there. Okay. Again, not a lawyer. The first thing I want to bring up is how you cannot use AI in your work. And that is as a ghostwriter. Okay. If you are going to chat GPT and saying, here's my chapter now, make it good, and then you're copy and pasting it, or worse, you're like, I got an idea for a chapter, write this, and not doing any of the work. Legally, it's not your work. It's the computer's. And you cannot copyright anything that a computer has made. So if you publish a book that is AI generated, and we'll get to some of the other issues that causes, it's not your book. You don't own it. Nobody owns it, because you cannot copyright a work of material created by ChatGPT or Grok or Claude. Doesn't exist. So you are in a major legal issue if you use generative AI to produce your work. Now, again, we'll get into, when I say produce, I mean literally copy and pasting into your work. Okay. On top of that, there are programs, and I'm a little skeptical that they actually work, but there are programs that scan your work for AI. And there are reportedly several platforms that if it comes up as this is AI written, it kicks it out. With KDP, there's a section where you have to tell it what AI is, either in the cover or in the manuscript. And there's several levels. There's no AI. I did use AI, but I very heavily edited it. This is all AI generated, yada, yada, yada. What programs did I use? And I think that's Amazon doing a little CYA, right? Like they're like, okay, we're going to allow it, but we don't know what the law is right now. So we want to know which one of these are bad or potentially bad when the shit hits the fan, basically. Back right here. So if you can't copy and paste the output of ChatGPT into your manuscript, what can you use AI for? Here is my opinion of ethical uses for AI. First of all, a spell checker. Now, if you're using something like Word, you probably have, or you're running things from Grammarly, you're already kind of using AI anyway. I mean, generative AI is a different beast, but it's still using the computer to check your work. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking your manuscript, run it up to ChatGPT and say, I mean the spelling errors. Now, again, I say this with a caveat. Some programs, some generative AI programs might take your work and use it to feed the learning model. So you might want to check the fine print on your program of choice, whether ChatGPT or Grok or whatever, and say, will it analyze your work? Are you okay with it? Can you disable that? These are the questions you need to ask yourself before you upload anything to ChatGPT or any other of these generative AI services. Me, myself, I'm not that concerned about it. My stuff is usually pretty out there that AI has no idea what the hell I'm doing. But I mean, again, I'm less concerned about that. I'm not really worried about my work being used to feed the model. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We're still new in this, so we don't really know what the repercussions are. But having it check for spelling errors, for grammar errors, I think that's perfectly acceptable. It's not actually doing any of the writing for you. It's just checking for errors. Okay. So that's case number one that I think is valid. Number two, and this one might get me a little bit flack, but one of the things I like using it for is to help with writer's block. So this actually happened when I was working on ISF2. I was in a little bit of getting towards the end. I'm like, okay, what really has to happen now? I'm thinking about it. And I had the chapter half written, and I went to one of these AI programs, whether it was ChatGPT or Claude, I forget. And I said, what happens next? Write the chapter for me. Right. And I know what? I just said, you can't do that. Give me a minute. I said, you can't do that and copy and paste the text into your manuscript. But what it did was it wrote the chapter out. And I read through it, and it was really bad. Right. Which is fine. That's fine. Because I wasn't looking for it to generate the chapter. I was looking for it to generate ideas. I just needed to get the gray matter going. And I looked through it, and its idea was really bad. But it got me thinking. I was like, okay, I see what it's trying to do. This is a really bad solution. But what would be a good solution is if I did this instead, and then I started writing. What the AI was basically trying to do was create another obstacle for the characters. And it invented one that made no sense and was impractical and everything like that. And I was like, okay, but I have a character that's having this chronic condition that's been popping up and causing problems. What if we had another one of those pop up? And then, but then we would need a diversion. So then I'll have to create a diversion. I actually started going back to earlier in the text to put a Chekhov's gun, so it didn't feel out of place when the second character created the diversion from the first character. And so the whole thing just started this domino effect of ideas that I started piecing together. Okay. Again, I think that's fine. Okay. If you're saying write the chapter for me, you're copy and pasting the text in your work, that's bad. If you're saying write the chapter for me, you read through it and you're like, no, that's kind of stupid. But you know what would be cool now that I think about it? I think that's fine. Because you're not actually using any of the stuff ChatGPT has generated. It's just, it's like asking a buddy, what's your advice? What's your opinion? That's fine. You can ask it its opinion. Another thing that you can use generative AI for, or ChatGPT or Claude or any of these other things, is kind of as a research partner, right? Hey, yeah, I need, a person's been shot. What are the medical protocols for doing this? I mean, if you're typing it up in Google, it's probably going to give you an AI response anyway. because I got that new section now where you do the search and then first thing that pops up is an AI summary before you start going through the links. But again, I think that's fine, but you have to have this little bit of a caveat because I have found that these generative AIs tend to hallucinate. I got a good example of this. Let's move on real quick before I get to that. The last thing that I tend to use ChatGPT for, or Claude, I bounce between the two right now, is reviewing my work. Like I'll upload the chapter. And what's really nice is with these things, they can actually chronicle every chapter you upload. Like you can have one project and it's just the entire work you're working on. And I can sit there and say, how's it going? How's the flow going? And again, this is not any different than asking a beta reader what his opinion is. Now, again, ChatGPT might give you its opinion and it might be bullshit. That's for you, the author, to discern. But you're going to get the same thing from a beta reader. Beta reader might read that and go, yeah, I like that character. He's kind of a jerk. Get rid of him. And you're like, well, okay, he's my main character. I cannot get rid of him. Plus, he's a jerk on purpose because he's got this growth arc. So, it just reminds me of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where it was, Scott Pilgrim's a real jerk. But that's the point. He starts as a jerk and he comes into a real good guy by the end of the movie, right? So, you can't become a good guy if you don't start as kind of a jerk. Is sort of the point of the movie. So, I'm rambling. You might get feedback either from a beta reader or from the AI that's bullshit, right? And again, you're the author. You're going to have to sift through that. You're going to have to say, this is a good point, but it doesn't work. This is not a good point. You don't know what you're talking about. And again, I will warn you that the AI will hallucinate. I'll give you an example. So in Intergalactic Space Force, I'm working on Intergalactic Space Force 3. The main character is Q-Tip. That's his nickname. Now, his real name is Quentin Tipper. The only person who ever calls him Quentin is his girlfriend. Everybody else, almost everybody else, calls him Q-Tip. There's only one other person that doesn't call him either name, and that's Sergeant Pebbles, because she is, stay with me, I know this a lot, an artificially evolved dog from the future that has gone back in time to prevent a horrible tragedy, which she did prevent, but now she's trapped in this alternate timeline. So now she's just part of the crew because she can't go back. In her version of the future, Quentin becomes a general of the resistance. So she calls him General. He's not a general. In fact, he's literally the lowest ranking person on the ship. But that's how she knows him. So she keeps calling him General, and not a general, and she keeps doing that. So this character is known by 3 different names, depending on who is talking. The AI thought I was talking about 3 different separate people. And so that caused some confusion. Now, if you've read the entire story, and again, I am feeding it the entire story, it's made clear in the beginning who we're talking to. But again, the AI hallucinates. And you would, like, I've seen it, like, the AI says, you didn't do this part good. And I'm like, I just read this part over at page 7, paragraph 2. Oh, my mistake. Actually, you did cover that, So, I mean, again, it's a useful tool, but do not rely on it, right? This is not your, like, for example, Grammarly. It's great for spell checking and grammar. It will still miss stuff. What I generally do when I'm writing, I'll write each individual chapter, then I'll put it together in one big book. Then I will run it through Grammarly just to catch the obvious errors. Then I hand it to a human editor. So I have a second pair of eyes going through this. When I get that back and I make all the changes, then I work on the audiobook. Because when you're doing the audiobook, you have to read every single word. You can't skim it like you normally do when you're reading, right? You have to actually say every word. And so when I read the audiobook, I can catch a few more errors. Things that might be grammatically correct, but it's wrong in context. For example, in ISF2, the robot was referred to as it. Now in 3, he's taken on a persona. He's considered a him. But in 2, he was a machine. He was called it. And there was a few times I slipped in the wrong pronoun and referred to the robot as he, him instead of an it. So I'm reading the audiobook. I'm like, oh, wait, that's wrong. Quick change and everything. Right. So the audiobook for me is the final edit. Okay. By that point, it's already gone through Grammarly, which again, do not rely on. It's a nice tool, but it's not the end all be all. Then it's gone through a human editor. So it's got a second pass with a human pair of eyes. Then it's going through a third pass as I'm doing the audiobook. And I have still found spelling errors in my work. Okay. So my new workflow is on top of Grammarly, feed it through ChatGPT and say, find me errors. Find me errors in consistency. Find me errors in grammar. Find me errors and just use it as an editor. And you can't use it as a ghostwriter, but you can use it as an editor. And remember, the suggestions it kicks out, you don't have to follow. I mean, if it told you that you spelled whole with a W and it's supposed to be whole with a H, well, you should go in and fix that. But if it tells you that I don't like this subplot with this character here, you should cut that, or it doesn't go anywhere, you don't have to listen to it. I had that on Fear with a previous editor, Liam Fort, fantastic editor, by the way. If you ever need an editor, he's a bit pricey, but he's worth it. It's good. He did Fear, and at the end of chapter 1, there was a whole section he redlined. It says, you don't need this. Because you're going to have this there. You already had this. And I'm just like, no, I want to keep that. It was a short little thing where a couple of guys run afoul of the creature and an incident happens. And I thought it was important to keep in the book. Now, Liam, as an editor, is like, well, sometimes you got to kill your darlings. He had some valid arguments of why we should cut it, but I felt I had stronger arguments for keeping it. So I kept it. And in the end of the day, it's my choice. It's my book. Again, not saying Liam was wrong, just saying I disagreed with him in this particular case. Like 95% of the time, I agree with his edits. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, God, I don't want to cut that. But okay, Liam makes some good points. We'll keep going. No. This was an exception. I did not agree with him. I think it's about the only time I really did not agree with him. But, as a writer, that's your job. You're crafting the book. And if the editor says, cut it, you're still the one that has to do it. And if you feel comfortable cutting it, if you think that the editor's correct, cut it. If you think he's wrong, maybe rework it, maybe keep it. If it works, if it doesn't work, it's ultimately on you. You're the writer. It's your piece. And it's no different than going through ChatGPT. The only difference is ChatGPT is going to sometimes hallucinate. The other thing you should be worried about with these generative AIs too is by default, they are pretty sycophantic. Oh, this is a great idea. Oh, the plot is great. And oh, your characters are so well developed, right? I kind of like that. Just because when you're writing, you're going to have the whole world telling you your stuff sucks. It is kind of nice to hear those little like, oh, I like this is great. Oh, this is fantastic over here. But kind of keep in mind, it is kissing your ass. right? Don't be like, going to your, oh, I need to keep this because ChatGPT said it was fantastic. ChatGPT isn't telling you it was fantastic. Don't let it go to your head. And I think there is now settings where, at least with ChatGPT, you can tell it instead of being, it can be more professional or it can be more sparse. So I think you can change that attitude a bit. I haven't played with it yet, but yeah, be careful because it will tell you that you're greater than Hemingway. It's going to tell you that you're the best writer that's ever walked the damn planet. And that may not be true. So take what it says with a grain of salt. I mean, if you can do that, then you're fine. So basically, to summarize, for ideas, yeah, sure. For research, yeah, sure. For feedback, for editing, yeah, you can use it. I would not rely on it. You can use it, but don't rely on it. Have your stuff double checked by an actual person. If you're writing a medical drama, you can use Google or ChatGPT to say, give me all the medical facts. But in the end, have somebody who actually is a doctor or a medical professional read through it and give you all the pros. That's why, The Pit's not written by ChatGPT. It's actually written by doctors. And that's why it's the most realistic medical show on TV right now. So, but with a huge grain of salt, that's what you can use generative AI for, in my humble opinion. What you cannot use ChatGPT for is to copy and paste. You cannot say, write it for me, camera, snip, throw it in there. I'm sure there's going to be purists out there that are going to say, even this is too far. You should not ever, ever, ever touch it. That is going to replace humans. In my opinion, it doesn't replace a human because a human is still in the pipe, right? I still hand it to an editor. It still has to get double checked by a human. So I'm not replacing a human editor with a AI generated one. I'm just adding another editor to the process to find that much more errors and make my stuff that much more bulletproof as I can be. So again, in my opinion, and you can disagree with me, that's fine. Get in the comments. In my opinion, those are the acceptable use cases. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Keep in mind too, when we upload these videos, we run them through an AI called Opus Pro, which takes a podcast and cuts it into clips and posts it on social media. The goal to generate interest in the podcast. Problem is, a lot of people see the clips. Some of them are out of context. And sometimes we get some negative feedback because, like, for example, with Doug Brody's book, when I was talking about how great it was, the clip had cut it kind of early. The book was out of frame. It was over here. The Opus Pro was cutting here. So nobody could see what the book was that I was talking about. And then it cut it and framed it before I mentioned what the book was. So nobody knew what this great, fabulous book was that I was talking about. If you see clips on TikTok or on YouTube or on Instagram, these are clips of a bigger podcast. They're meant to entice you to tune into the podcast, not just watch a clip and be done with it. So please, if you're watching this, if I'm like this and I'm on Instagram, go find my podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. It's on Podbean. And Podbean puts it on a half dozen platforms. It's not hard to find. It really isn't. So please check out the podcast if you're seeing a clip here. All right. So enough AI talk. Let's go on to this week's showcase. I met this gal over at LA Comic-Con, which I think is a huge showcase for indie authors. If you are looking for an indie author, WonderCon and LA Comic Con are two great places to go because you're going to have a huge variety of indie authors, huge variety of genres to choose from. At WonderCon, I have seen anything from mecha sci-fi to anime-inspired romance to Futanari porn. So it runs the gambit. Okay. This gal I met at LA Comic Con, which is probably even better than WonderCon, and WonderCon's really good, but LA had this huge. I mean, just Kanata Hall was just filled. The only problem with filling Kanata Hall is so many people don't know there's a Kanata Hall. I think they tried to fix that by putting the celebrities. So you got the autographs, you had to go down and through, because they might not wander down there unless they know that they can get their autograph with Elizabeth Olsen or something like that. But Kanata Hall was just filled, and it's got to be at least double the space that WonderCon has for indie authors. And there were still others, like there were some up in Artist Alley, there was some up in that had full booths upstairs. So there was just wow. I went to Kanata Halls. So this person I did meet, we are talking about Ingrid Moon, and we're talking about her book, The Handler's Gambit. So this is a very militaristic sci-fi novel. Okay. Our main character is actually at some academy. He's trying to get out of the academy. He winds up going on into another like branch of service. It's sort of like the equivalent of you're trying to get out of the United States Navy. So you wind up getting hired by the Russian Navy, I guess would be the equivalent. And we fast forward a couple of years after that first chapter and realize he's not really happy here either. He's trying to get out. And he is put in charge of handling the weapon, which is very invoking of, Black Widow in the Red Room kind of thing, right? This is she's a member of an alien species that she has been basically bred and trained to be an assassin by the same alien species that are basically running this fleet right now. And so they're going on military ops, but at the same time, this character, Commander Boone, is trying to juggle things. So his own illicit activity is kind of hidden. He's trying to get out from underneath the warlord that he's serving because he's kind of psychotic and just wanting to burn everything down. Gee, we in America don't know anything about that. We learn how brilliant of a tactician is. Now I will say, one of the problems I have with this book, it's a good solid sci-fi book. If you're into that kind of stuff, this is right up your alley. But it suffers kind of the same fate as a lot of books of this type does, which is Turner Boone is a product of this world, of this universe. So nothing has to be explained to him. He knows how everything works because he grew up in it. Now he's young, he's inexperienced, he does have to learn a few things, but nobody has to explain to him what a Saxon is, for example, because he's serving under a Saxon. What's a Saxon? It's one of the alien races. What makes them Saxons? Part of what you got to figure out. So, I mean, again, it's sort of, it's kind of like the equivalent of like when you watch Dune and it just like, you're just thrown in because you have this whole world and there's no real backdrop. Like, where is Earth, right? If you watch Dune, there is no Earth. Now, if you read the series and read the follow-up series that were written by Frank Herbert's son after his death, you realize that Earth is in the history. It's in the distant past. There was actually, all these humans actually came from Earth and everything like that. But you don't get that from the original book. The original book is literally a galaxy far, far away kind of thing, where we're thrown into this world and you have to kind of catch up through context what all this is about. They will explain some things to you, but they can't just stop the story cold and give you a bunch of exposition. And like, okay, so you see this planet here is part of this confederation and they joined over here. So when you're reading a book like this, you have to pick up a lot through the context clues. You have to sit there and say, okay, this is an alien. I guess we're going to learn more about this as we go. Okay, now I'm getting it. Yeah, we get the same problem, at least in my opinion, when we do like fantasy books, like, Lord of the Rings. They're not really going to sit there and just give you this big, huge thing in the chapter. These are orcs, these are elves, these are dwarves, So I guess what I'm trying to say is the negatives from the book are kind of not really Ingrid Moon's negatives. They're just sort of the nature of this type of book. Anytime when you have this huge alternate world and everybody is from this alternate world, you got to go with it. I mean, I had a similar problem when I was doing with the Lost Ship. Because in the Lost Ship, we're in a world where aliens have basically conquered humanity. And so I'm reading this, I'm like, what's with the lizard dude? Why is he in charge and everything like that? Takes a few chapters to kind of get caught up and realize, oh, we got conquered. And again, they don't just really say that in chapter 1. It's not like there's a text scroll, 500 years ago, the Earth was conquered by giant snakes with arms, and they're really mean. We don't like them, but if we don't do as they say, they'll kill us all. Now, So anyway, if you are a sci-fi reader, if you're a big fan of reading things like Dune or The Lost Ship or anything like that, you're going to be used to that. Okay. So it is a little like being tossed in the middle of a foreign country without knowing the language and having to learn it as you go. Okay. But again, with these kind of books, that's kind of the norm. So not really a flaw, just kind of a warning. If you are not already into sci-fi and into that or fantasy and into that kind of world building kind of thing, you're going to struggle with it. But you're also going to struggle with Dune. You're going to struggle with The Lost Ship. You're going to struggle with Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. So overall, I think the book it's a solid book. We start seeing a little bit of a relationship developing between Boone and Elion, i.e. the weapon. And we start seeing what his larger plan is and will it actually work out? And this is book 1 of a series. So I'm kind of curious of what happens after this. But overall, I would say if you are a fan of sci-fi, especially if you're a fan of militant sci-fi, give the Handler's Gambit a try. So with that is this week's podcast. We will be at WonderCon at the end of March. So keep an eye on for us for that. We got some interviews lined up. I know I've been talking with Cynthia Diamond. We just got to find a good date. I had one of our podcasts was caught by Brandon McNulty, who we've talked about many times on this show. And he said, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast. We'd love to have you. So now I got to find a date for him. I think that would be really great because again, if you've ever seen his YouTube videos, they're way more polished than this shit, right? He's got that down. He's got a very polished professional uh, YouTube channel that I really admire. So we're talking about getting him on the show. We already have an interview scheduled for March, and we're going to do a little something special. So hence the microphones. So don't want to get too spoilery with that, but stay tuned for that. So we are definitely busy for this month and for next month. Really busy next month. So keep tuned in. Remember, if you want to support us, the best thing you can do is go to our website at shopspectralink.com. There's a whole menu page just for Indie Author Showcase. You can also purchase any of our books, book-related merch. We have t-shirts, we have beach towels, we have blankets, we have coffee mugs, you name it. If I can slap a book cover on it and print it out, it's available for purchase. We also have a Patreon, podbean.com/indie author showcase, patreon.podbean.com/indie author showcase is our Patreon. So again, if you want to join the Patreon, feel free. Otherwise, we'll see you next week and keep on reading.